looks like a corner. Uh-huh.
Okay, try that. That's it.
Does it fit?
So now if we rotate the engine, we should have compression. We do. You put your thumb on it, not in it, put your thumb on it.
Can I just turn it?
Sure. Does that have compression?
I think so.
Yep, so we're not going to do this now, but the next step is the push rods so the valves will open and close at the right time.
Okay.
Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to make a storm responder generator from parts. This is one I picked up a few months back, and I didn't make a video on it because I thought this was a parts machine. The engine had run out of oil, and I thought the piston was stuck in the bore. So I let my son take this one apart, and once he did, I could see not only was the piston not stuck, but it had survived the trauma, and the cylinder looked halfway decent. So I cleaned up the cylinder, cleaned up the crankshaft, measured everything up, and everything was dead on, standard size. So I ordered a new connecting rod and rings. My son actually put this together with a bit of supervision, and at this point I think I have a good engine. But I do want to start it, listen to the engine, make sure it is in fact good, and if it is, I'm going to turn my attention to this frame. It is a bit of a mess. It needs to be cleaned up, so I'll do that. We'll put this thing together and get it outside for some proper load testing and break-in. So let me set up a little bit better. We'll get this engine started and see how it does. No issues there. That's a good engine, so let's clean up that frame. The frame really isn't that bad on pretty much every side except for this one, and it's only confined to this rail and only the front and the top of the rail. So I think I'm just going to clean that rail up and try to match the color the best I can. Well, it came out really good, but the color's not even close. If you look at the frame here, you can see that's what I was aiming for, and that's what I got. So we'll just call this a base coat. We'll go back to the store and see if I can't find a better match. Well, there's not much I can do about this mistake. I need to wait 48 hours for it to cure, so there's no reason why I can't proceed, at least getting the wheels and the foot back on, drop the engine in place, and bolt on that power head. For the bell housing, I usually torque this to about 20 foot-pounds, and I'd use some Loctite. Medium strength is fine. You just want to make sure you have some on there, because if one of these bolts breaks free, it's going to stay in here until something breaks. On this engine, I usually torque that rotor bolt down to about 23 foot-pounds, but I recently broke one doing that, so I'm going to back off a bit. We'll do 20 foot-pounds on this one, and before I can do that, I do need to lock up that engine. So the easiest way to do that is to pull the spark plug out, get the piston at the bottom of its travel, fill a cylinder with rope, and that essentially will lock the engine up, so then I can torque that to 20 foot-pounds. just going to take a minute to clean the slip rings. I've already done this one a bit. I'm going to keep going on that as well as clean this one up. I'm going to use Scotch-Brite to do this, and it doesn't take long, but it'll make for a better transfer of power to the rotor. The biggest thing to watch out for is the wire. There's one on each side feeding each slip ring. You don't want to knock into that and break it, because then you'll need a new rotor. Now's a perfect time to pull the engine over. You want to make sure the rotor is not making contact with that stator. The spark plug is still out, so the engine should spin freely. That's perfect. It's been 48 hours, and I tried to find a rattle can color that would match better than what I put on there earlier and came up empty. So I had this oil-based enamel custom made to match the Storm Responder gray. So I'm sure I'll get plenty of use of it in the future. Unfortunately, I can't use an air sprayer, which is all I have. You have to use an airless system. So I'm going to have to go old school on this one and just use a brush. I'd say that is a perfect match. So while that is setting up, we'll finish up the electrical, and then once it dries, we'll get it outside and start it up. The wiring on this is pretty straightforward. The stator wires are already connected to this quick connect, so we just need to install the outlet panel and plug that in. And then there's the brushes. We have these two wires. These are AC going into the brushes, so they can go on either terminal. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that this tab here is facing in because this is DC out, and the positive brush I think is the one on the inside. If you flip it, it's not going to damage the rotor, but the generator will not power up, and most likely it'll cause a loss of residual magnetism, in which case you'd have to flip this back the right way and then flash it before you get any power back. Just make these snug. They strip out very easily, so you just want it tight enough to hold the brushes in place without any slop. Pretty much ready to go here. I just need to hook up the fuel and then I'll be ready to start it. Now, this power head should work, but it came off a storm responder with a blown engine. So I guess that's the first thing I'm looking for. Once it starts, I want to make sure that light comes on. And assuming it does, I'm going to check the voltage in the hertz output. You know, I did bend this tab a bit to slow the engine down after being rebuilt. So I'm going to have to increase the spring tension to bring it up closer to 61.5 hertz. And once I'm there, I'll let the engine warm up a bit more. I'll put a 1500 watt load on it for a time and then turn it off. I'm going to do that a few times over the course of a half hour, even load it up to 3000 watts a few times. And at that point, at the half hour mark, get this back inside, change the oil, and assuming everything went well, I'll just finish this up. shouldn't have to bend the tab as far as I did to get it up to speed. I was only at about 55 hertz. So I'm going to move the spring a little bit further out. That might decrease the sensitivity a bit, so we'll have to test that under load. And if that's the case, then most likely I'll have to swap out that spring. But let's try moving it into the 6th position and see how that does. Perfect. No issues to report. And the engine runs well. It was running slow, but I bumped that up to 61.5 hertz. It handles the load without issue. With 3,000 watts applied, it was still holding at about 60.5 hertz. So having the spring where it is definitely not hurting anything. Anyway, I'm going to let the engine cool down just a bit. We'll get the oil changed and finish putting this thing together. All right, guys, well, that is pretty much a wrap. This one I was kind of dragging my feet on. That engine was actually rebuilt months ago, and I was really just waiting for a better frame. Not that this one was that bad, but, I've tried to match that Storm Responder gray before and failed miserably, kind of like I did on the first attempt with this project. But that custom color, it's a pretty good match. I mean, you can't even tell. So that, I think, makes me the most happy on this project. Plus, we now have a good generator. Anyway, aside from running this a few more hours and doing another oil change, I would say this one's done. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.